Today on the It's Real podcast.
Americans feel worse off financially than they have in 25 years. What does that mean for the housing market?
We're talking contracts. Why you sign one with an agent but not a lender? And can you fire your agent?
New listings are finally hitting the market across the Midwest. Is this the break that buyers have been waiting for?
Plus, a major industry shakeup. Real Brokerage acquires RE/MAX.
And the 9 Ds of real estate, the life events that drive every move.
Ooh, great topics. The It's Real podcast starts now.
You're tuned into the It's Real podcast with your hosts, Kayla Callender and Andrew Yagi. Each week, we'll talk about what happens behind the scenes working full-time in real estate and share with you real-life stories, our successes and failures as we work to help consumers and industry professionals reach their real estate and real-life goals. Here we go.
Andrew Yagi, it's great to see you.
Episode 106, Kayla.
106.
I sent out, we're getting better at sending out a weekly email, and I sent it out to kind of all of our database, and I got a couple of texts about episode 105, including someone close to me who watches a lot of our episodes and said, hey, 105, fantastic.
Ooh. So, wow. I wonder what it was that caused that. I like it because I feel like that one is a little bit more raw. So maybe we need to go that route. Love that. Well, good. What's shaking in your world?
What's shaken? The market is shaken. Things are busy. You know, I was just visiting with my team this morning, and we put a number of properties on the market this week. Also got some properties under contract for buyers. And still, I think I mentioned it before, I have seen almost a resemblance in some ways to the market of 2021 and 2022 when rates were low, and that we've seen a lot of offers. 48 offers on some properties, and then some were, hey, you know, we're the only offer, or some properties that are just sitting. I was talking to a Fargo agent just this morning, Mr. Pat Stoa, and
Pat Stoa.
Pat was I was asking him the market, and he's like, yeah, it's just really, really crazy, just all of a sudden how it's busy. Although he said in Fargo, seeing more people liking some of the existing previously owned homes versus new construction, especially when there are not or lesser specials. So
it makes it
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's heating up. I mean, we can feel it. Parade of Homes is this weekend and next, and people are, coming out from a year ago or 5 years ago, or first-time home buyers. And we've talked about it before, but a lot of pent-up energy of, okay, now I just am so tired of renting. I just want to buy. That's what I hear so much more than I used to. It used to be we're living with, parents for a little bit. Now they're like, we need to get out. We need a house. This is the next step. I want to adult is kind of what I'm hearing. So I think there's a lot of energy in the market right now.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the chips fall this year, but strap in and we're along for the ride. I want to ask you, though, you just got away on your first trip out of Minnesota, North Dakota in quite some time. How was Scott?
Yeah, first, this is kind of crazy, but it was the first warm weather vacation that we've taken in 6 years, which is wild. Now, yes, we've got the lake home, and that's a vacation and a responsibility all in itself. But we went out to the Scottsdale Paradise Valley area and had a wonderful weekend. It was the first time, Andy, in probably a year and a half that I haven't taken my laptop out on a weekend. Worked from my phone a little bit. I don't know if it was just happened to be, but had some relaxation time. We climbed up Camelback, which, by the way, it is not a path. It is not a path that you walk. You are using your muscles in ways you haven't before. And I'm sorry, but I Googled when I got off of that mountain how many people die on that thing every year, because it was not what I was expecting.
How many?
It wasn't very clear. It was it's hard to determine. And then I was talking to my coworker, and he was telling me how he knows a guy that went hiking and no one ever found him. And so I'm just glad I didn't do that before, but it was just so challenging. I wasn't expecting it. I loved it, but just the energy in Arizona is different, right? The sun, the people, Just it's a completely different vibe, and it just re-energizes you. So it felt great to get out there.
I thought that the last time we were down there as well, and we went and saw some family and also enjoyed the outdoors a little bit too. But I just thought even just driving down the street, it was like, wow, like
Yeah.
imagine like living down here all the time. And okay, I do really enjoy where we live. I like the seasons, but
Mhm.
even now, like I just find how nice the weather is. Like even last night, um, my girls, my two older ones, had violin lessons, and so we're kind of near downtown, and so we decided, okay, what are we going to do because there's not really enough time to run back home. We're going to go down and we're going to walk kind of the river walk and just go and enjoy
Mhm.
the outdoors. And it's like, wow, so
Mhm.
much better of a mindset, a better mood. And also apparently in real estate too, people have a better mindset and they're ready to go out and make a deal and get on a
Yeah.
mom and dad's basement.
Yeah, right. I would say it's definitely probably bebopping a lot more down in Arizona than it is around here, but it'll warm up. When it does, more people will come out. That's just what naturally happens. But what did you end up doing this last weekend, Andy?
Boy, what did we do? The weeks and weekends just seem to run together, Kayla. So there are a lot of times I honestly have to go back and look at my calendar
I get
just
it.
because like where were we? What did we do? It
Mhm.
was kind of a low-key weekend actually. We kind of hung out. One of the girls kind of went and hung out with a friend for one whole day of the weekend. And so Violet, our middle one, she had volleyball. We kind of kicked around town, did some shopping, went to church, relaxed a little bit, and yeah, just kind of had it was pretty
Perfect.
rare that we had kind of a down weekend, so we
That's
enjoyed
kind
it.
of nice. That's nice. And now back to it, back to the grind, and it's almost the weekend. But and you guys have been busy. You say that your team is seeing a lot more activity.
Yeah.
I'm seeing, I was going to just add to this, I'm seeing more seller concessions lately. Could be the houses that my clients are offering on, but I've seen 10,000 and 8,500 in the last week. So
Wow.
just something to just share with our audience that it's it's not that it's impossible. It just depends on the property. It depends. Has it been sitting? Are there other offers? What negotiations are you putting in your contract? And I just tell people, work with your realtor. They'll pull comps, like have those conversations. But I've seen a few contracts come in with seller concessions, so that's a positive.
Yeah, I would say, I've seen a couple, but we've also seen just some wild competitive situations in which we've seen mostly none. There have been a couple that have asked for some concessions, which obviously have not made for strong offers in a competitive situation. But yeah, I would say the
Mhm.
market's all over the board.
Yeah. Well, and I think it'll continue to improve. I mean, people are asking, what are rates doing? And we've seen them ebb and flow. But again, we've talked about it before. I don't think rates are sidelining people right now. I just think in general, it's like you're either ready or you're not. So,
Right. Absolutely. Well,
mhm.
Kayla, jumping into real estate in our discussion today, because we did promise a lot in our teaser just a couple of minutes ago. How was that for you, by the way?
I mean, exciting. I mean, different,
It'll work. It'll work. Give
right?
people a little preview about what's going on. But kind of the first area, Kayla, which I feel like this is almost like a paradox with what we just talked about, with the fact that, hey, the market has been pretty busy. This article that I saw come out saying
Yeah.
America worse off financially than at any point in 25 years. And this was a Gallup study that was done. And so, basically they interviewed about 1,000 Americans and just kind of seeing what percent of them felt like they were worse off. Well, you go back and you look around the '08 mark, it was about 48% of Americans
Mhm.
felt they were worse off. When we had our 2020, our little pre-COVID recession, it was right about 50%. Today, 55% of people, Kayla, feel like their financial situation is getting worse.
Mm.
It seems a little bit contradictory when, we think about how wild the real estate market has kind of been so far, but you're also talking a lot more, personal financial situation with
Yeah.
people. What are you seeing?
I just had a client today tell me, hey, we think we're going to get a line of credit and improve our current home. I had clients last month that said, hey, we're going to pull out a contract. Our house fell through and we just think this is too big of a next move. So we're always busy in mortgage because we're constantly having conversations. Should you buy? Should you sell? Should you refi? What should you do with your finances? Not every one of them ends up buying. Not every one of them decides to move forward. Not every one of them finds a home. Not every one of them gets an offer accepted. So I would say a lot of realtors, they see the people that are typically, and I don't want to speak for you or other realtors, but usually you're busy with showing homes and people are wanting to sell their home. As lenders, we're seeing all sorts of people. I mean, we probably had 8 clients last week that we couldn't assist. They weren't ready, credit issues. And so although we're busy, I think that doesn't always equate to business and deals. So I think there's a lot of people that things have gotten more expensive. Maybe they're not seeing a raise with their job. I've had a lot of people tell me lately that the job market has changed. I've got clients right now that have had probably 15 interviews between the two of them, husband and wife. So I think there's a lot that's not talked about, that even though it's busy for us, it doesn't necessarily mean people are for sure moving forward, if that makes sense.
Yep. And you probably see a little bit more of that than we do. I would say we see a lot of that as well. Where I think about some of the individuals that we've worked with in our office lately, and we had one individual, hey, I'm going to sell, I'm going to buy something new, need something better for later in life. Well, all of a sudden that changes to, you know what, I don't want to be a homeowner, I want to rent. We had another individual buyers we got in contract, and all of a sudden one of them is in a pretty bad accident and is sitting in the hospital. So, we, have people, we fall in and out of, various stages with clients as well, but, sometimes for different reasons. But yeah, this report really, really highlights, and I hear a lot of people talking about this, and certainly I notice it at the grocery store, I notice it at the gas station, but, this article really talks about the fact that, 31% of individuals say the cost of living is their biggest issue: housing, food, healthcare, gas. We know gas prices and the global events are making things worse. And I think a lot of people too feeling like, okay, yep, I've got a job, but it doesn't feel like a great job, or there's just not a lot of upward growth or movement, which is what I kind of think leads to this chart and kind of consumer sentiment.
Well, I think too, are people saving for retirement? Every time I have a consult with a client, it's, we'll ask tons of questions, not just, about your family or your wants or your needs, but I'll often say, do you work with a financial advisor? 9 out of 10 times, Andy, they don't. And they're like, no, but I want to. And I'm like, do you have retirement? No, but I want to. And I think a lot of people have been living paycheck to paycheck, and they're not thinking about their future as well. And I think that's probably normal. But from someone who talks to a handful of people every single day, I would tell you that the people I talk to, not every one of them has even thought about that, and they're in their 30s and they have kids. And so even though they're getting by, day by day, or might be buying a house, some of them aren't set up for those other things. And it's because of what we're seeing, the expensive prices of things and the job market. It kind of all adds up.
So Kayla, someone's probably sitting out there listening to or watching this and saying, yep, it's pretty obvious. You don't have to tell me this. I understand that things are getting tougher for my family. Give me something actionable. Don't just sit here and talk about the obvious. Kayla, what can I do? Like, yep, I'm sitting here, maybe with the family. I'm in my 30s, like you just referenced, and I don't have anything saved for retirement. I mean, we've got stable housing right now. Man, we'd really like to move or build or do something, but we've done nothing for retirement. What should I be doing?
A lot of times we hear people say, hey, I'm really not in the position to probably have a conversation with you right now. We're out like a year from buying. We don't want to talk until we find a home. Well, I always tell people, have the conversation, because we can't help you. And like a doctor can't, and I say it all the time, a doctor cannot diagnose or prescribe unless they've seen you and talked to you. And the same applies with your finances. I encourage people, let's just have a conversation. Let's just gather an application, because then we can say, oh, wow, there's some high interest credit cards. There's some things that you could pay off. Many times clients are not told what they can do with their money to increase cash flow. So I would say, if you are looking to purchase, one, have a conversation with a lender. I don't care if you're a month out or 2 years out. It's never too soon to start planning. I think having a financial advisor, regardless of how much money you have, having one that will connect with you without having a minimum. And I would say, in addition, maybe think about what it would look like if you started setting money aside, maybe through your work. If your work has a match, or if your spouse's work has a match, or your financial planner you could talk to about how much money should I be setting aside for retirement? You don't know that unless you talk to the right individual. So talk to a lender, talk to a financial advisor, and then take the advice. It doesn't mean you have to actually implement it, but at least you have a path from there.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
It's a good thought.
Just
say,
kidding.
my advice, Kayla, would be, I think that certainly is good advice and would work well for some. I'm big on, learn to help yourself. I don't care what you go and do, whether you're going to the doctor. You have to learn to advocate for yourself. Same with a financial planner. I've heard plenty of horror stories when it comes to financial planners, where people just have not had great experiences. And so when I look at it, I think you've got to become your own advocate. Study, do the basics. If it's just, from an investing standpoint, if you can't put a lot aside, take your phone out right now and download the Robinhood app, for instance. Makes it super easy to go start a Roth IRA or a brokerage account, go and throw money into an S&P 500 index fund. That's what Warren Buffett would recommend everyone does, especially if you're not particularly savvy. And even if you think you're savvy, it still outperforms, most of even the highly paid financial managers. You might attend a church or be involved somewhere in the community. Maybe they have a Dave Ramsey program.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of it is budgeting, Kayla. And I'm not a big Dave Ramsey fan. I don't think it's the way, but it's something that does work for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately you have to start by helping yourself.
Amen. I love that ad. It's like that add-on. It's true. And there's so many tools now. I mean, you could pull up ChatGPT or Claude and put in your information. Now, be careful, but yeah, help yourself. A lot of people think push button, I'm going to get help. Push button, get mortgage. Push button, get house. It takes some time and some investment and some research. And I love that answer for sure.
Kayla, I want to shift gears and I want to talk about contracts. So you brought it up before we started shooting today.
Mm-hmm.
Why does a consumer need to sign a contract with an agent but not a lender? And hey, let's talk about hiring and firing if you want to fire your lender or if you want to fire your agent.
Yeah, well, I had a client, and this doesn't happen frequently, but I had a client that came to me and said, hey, like, we don't feel like our realtor's fighting for us. And I just said, okay, have you talked to him? Have you had the conversation? And they're like, well, yeah, we feel like he's just not really fighting, and we don't feel like we're represented well. I talked to them about like some strategies for writing an offer. And I'm like, well, your realtor will talk about that. They'll pull comps. And they're like, well, he never shared any of that. And so I just advised, talk to your agent, have the conversation. And they said, but we signed a contract for him to represent us. Well, they pulled up the contract and it says, they can cancel if parties agree. Both parties agree. Exactly. So with that being said, they want to know, could they get out of it? And I said, you're going to just have to talk to your agent. So that's kind of what prompted this conversation today. So Andy, tell me more about that. Tell me more. Have you run into that? Have you heard of any stories? I'd like to know your perspective because I don't, just because I'm on the lending side.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you're buying with an agent, generally you're going to have to sign a buyer representation agreement. It just outlines your timeline, your relationship, how the agent's getting compensated. I always tell individuals, like, if you don't feel like this is a good fit, you can go ahead and cancel it on me. That's fine. If you don't want to work with me, I don't really want to work with you. Life's too short. Let's move on. However, that is not an excuse for you to back out because all of a sudden we looked at a property together and, oh boy, you happen to know the seller. And they just said, well, cancel on your agent and we'll just do the deal on the side here and it'll save me some commission and hey, you'll get a better deal. So that's not there's a strict provision in both listing and buyer rep agreements about that. As it pertains to selling a home, same thing. I tell individuals that I work with, hey, this is our contract, this is our timeline, but if I'm not holding up my end of the agreement or you don't feel like I'm doing a good job for you, you can cancel it. Kind of the same mindset. Not every agent has that. There are a lot of individuals who they're like, well, no, it's a contract. I'm not releasing you. I've spent a lot of time and energy and effort, and that's probably true. But I
Mhm.
mean, if the relationship is strained, you're probably not going to go to therapy or counseling for agents and buyers. You're just better off cutting your losses and moving on and finding
Yeah.
somebody that values you, Kayla.
Well, and I would not think it would be comfortable to be showing homes to somebody that wants to cancel. I just wouldn't want to deal with that. So good to know. So if they mutually agree, then you can go separate ways. What if they're already in contract? What if they've already found a home and they've signed?
I have seen situations like that have happened, or there's been some falling out. Generally, they've been able to work it out and be like, hey, let's get through the contract. If it's a larger office, or even if it isn't, like, hey,
Mhm.
it might just be someone that, hey, I'm going to refer you over to my broker, and my broker is going to help complete the transaction since obviously our relationship is strained.
Mhm. Well, and that's just good to know. So at the end of the day, can you go separate ways? Yes, but there has to be a specific time and place.
But it's just like so many things in life, it comes down to communication. If you're having problems or you're not on the same page, sometimes, hey, Kayla, can we schedule a meeting and just sit down? I think we need a reset. Let's just sit down, and there are some concerns we have. And hey, let's figure it out. If we can't, let's part ways. Life goes on.
Mhm. Mhm. But I think communication is kind. If you're unhappy, bring it up. Maybe this realtor didn't know that they wanted, XYZ. Have the conversation, be direct, and see where it goes. Okay.
What about it? That it is an interesting point, though, you bring up.
Mhm.
So you can technically fire an agent. A lender, you don't have to have any kind of upfront contract with.
No. Well, and it's not set up that way. It's not. And there's compensation rules. So you can't charge like an upfront commitment fee due to RESPA. And it allows people to be able to shop. And so think about these clients that talk to one lender. And let's just say the lender is not a great lender and they're charging high fees and they feel forced to stay with them and then they switch their fees or their rates or their communication. I think it's just set up differently in general. But no, I mean, a client can work with me. We can have a discovery call, get them pre approved, have a pre approval presentation, run numbers for a year. We could be working with somebody pulling credit, verifications of employment. Most people don't realize that even though it doesn't cost the consumer anything to apply with a lender to get pre approved, it does cost the lender money to do it. Think about it. We're pulling credit reports. That's not free. We're doing verifications of employment. I've seen some employment verifications through certain companies cost $150, $160. If we're pulling multiple verifications of employment, we could be looking at anywhere between $220 to up to probably $800 per client that we are paying and investing to get a client pre-approved. And then they could go elsewhere. So although there's time invested and money invested up front, we don't necessarily get to work with that person if they decide to go elsewhere. So definitely different than the realtor model, but I would say the similarity is I just try to get my commitment up front with clients. Like, hey, if you want to work with me, then going forward, here are the next steps. But it doesn't mean they can't switch. They sure could, but that's just how I personally create that loyalty, that stickiness.
So I'm buying a home, and we're halfway down the road. Appraisals order done. I decide I don't want to work with Kayla anymore. I could do that.
Technically, yeah. I mean, you could have an appraisal order. Now you'll have to pay for that appraisal. A lot of companies charge for the appraisal fee up front. Some don't. Typically,
Is
you're
it
going to get a
for that
bill.
reason?
Yes. I mean, that is typically it. I mean, you don't know if someone's going to walk away. And I've had other companies where the client's like, hey, they've ghosted me. They won't respond. I was told I should work with you. I was just told this. So I've been on the other side where a client has come to me because their lender is just gone and they've been through the inspection. I had a client last week that we were able to do a different program than someone else, but it was too late. They were too far in because at some point you can't just be switching lenders last minute because you're starting a file over and their team needs the time, the underwriting, the processing, the the closing, the balancing. So can it happen? Yes. But I would say at some point you're kind of stuck because you're too far in. So
Interesting. Yeah.
mhm,
I haven't really seen that ever happen. I
mhm.
mean, of course, we've seen a lot of issues, with lending and underwriting, and all of a sudden finding out financial skeletons that have caused problems. At which point, sometimes another lender has been able to step in, just
Mhm.
because they
Yep.
might have a greater appetite. But yeah, very
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. So
Okay, good chat on contracts. I want to keep things moving because I know you've got somewhere to be,
always.
and we committed to a lot of content today. So hey, I want to touch on this really quick because I thought this was very interesting. A lot
Mhm.
of people talk doom and gloom in the economy, and they talk about that. Boy, again, we talked about consumer sentiment. It's not great, but then hey, we see what's going on in the real estate market right now, and that things are kind of going gangbusters in some ways. And then I came across this article, Kayla, where it talked about the Northeast and Midwest housing markets finally crack open, and new listings surge. In fact, they've surged, or this is the highest number of homes on the market in the spring, or the strongest April since 2022. 480,000 homes were brought to market, up 8.7% month over month and 1% year over year. What's more, the surge in new listings was particularly muscular in the nation's most inventory-starved regions, offering buyers greater variety. That's awesome news.
That's excellent news. I mean, inventory has always been a hot topic. Do you think it's because, well, I'll ask you because I'm kind of thinking this, and I don't know if the article talks about this, but if people are in these golden handcuffs in this 3% interest rate, and rates are at 7%, to go from 3 to 7 is a jump. But as rates soften and come down, let's say 6%, going from a 3% mortgage to a 6% allows sellers to feel more just more comfortable having not that huge leap. But are you seeing that as, hey, we've been waiting for so long, there's other things that are more important than an interest rate? Do you feel like that has a lot to do with this?
I think the 9Ds have a lot to do with it, Kayla, which
Tell
we'll
me about
maybe
the 90s.
hit on in just a moment. I'd love to. Yeah, and well, actually, we could segue to that because it actually does play very well into it. So there are a lot of reasons, and I was talking to one of my agents today. We were shooting some video content, kind of a meet the team segment, and just talked about how real estate's great, and it's just so many people that are really happy and excited, making a move, buying and selling. But realistically, there are a lot of people that aren't happy when they have to buy or sell. And we often overlook those. And so I came across this earlier, and I'm going to just rattle it off pretty quick because I know you have somewhere to be, Kayla. I know I have somewhere to be too, and we've been pretty chatty today, which is good.
Always chatty.
But I'm gonna rattle them off here. So D number one is debt. So financial pressure. There are some people, and I'm sure you see it, where people are like, "Hey, we need to pay some debt off. We need to downsize
Yes.
or relocate." You see that quite a bit.
All the time. All the time. In fact, I've seen a lot of we want to go through another round of IVF, even if it's there's debt that's coming, that, expected debt too.
And there's nothing wrong with any of that. I mean, I think that's really awesome. That's a great responsible financial decision versus sitting and thinking, boy, we should be doing something, but we're not. But anyway, number two and number three maybe are more positive: diamonds and diapers. So positive life event like an engagement or a marriage is a pretty obvious reason. And then diapers, growing families, kids, or again, expecting kids. Create the need for more space, better schools, or a more family-friendly home.
Amen.
Kayla, downsizing is another one, and we see it a lot, especially in our area where we're a little bit more of a retirement community, where people are like, "Hey, I want to, get rid of this house. I want something slab on grade." Although as I was talking to Pat this morning on the phone, he said he got a call from an older couple last night they were looking to sell and wanting to buy something, and he said, "Oh, I imagine a slab on grade." They said, "No, we want a full basement still." So one should not always prejudge and assume that just because someone's 70, 80, 90 that they are looking for a slab on grade home.
Amen. Yeah.
Kayla, another one is distance, job relocation, or wanting to be closer or farther away from family. I've actually had people say, hey, we need to get out of here because we want to get away from family. We're looking for a different type of lifestyle.
Love
So,
that distance.
and then kind of the last four are all kind of, negative ones in a sense, depending on what side of the coin you're on, but, generally a little bit more sad. One being divorce, which is pretty obvious, dividing up assets. Quite often, a home will need to be sold or at least one new home be purchased. Disaster, fire, flood, major damage that make a house unlivable or just financially impractical to keep. We've seen that across the country these last couple of years. Number 8, to disability, Kayla, a physical or a health challenge that requires more accessible home or a different living setup. And 9, the final one, the end, death, the passing of a homeowner, which leads heirs to sell the property or a surviving spouse to relocate. So
all things that cause people to relocate. There was one D that was missed though, Andy.
What's that?
Dogs.
You're really parlaying off of our last episode where we talked about why people are really buying or what's influencing them more than kids, and that's dogs.
Dogs, yeah. I mean, I've had people say I want to buy a house because I want a dog, or I need to get out of this apartment. Today on Snapchat, I had someone send me a picture of a dog and said, we need to get out of our apartment. We got a dog. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. So 10 Ds.
Well, we know if we see the list of Ds coming from Kayla Calendar Mortgage, they're going to be 10.
There's going to be 10, and dogs will be number 1. So I love that, though. I love that list because it's so true. No matter what rates are doing in the market or inventory or seller concessions, those are things that cause people to move, and they're all very valid reasons.
Right on. Kayla, the last piece of our episode today I want to touch on is Real Broker buying Remax Holdings. So a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, I've never heard of Real Broker. If you see the logo here, you've maybe seen it. It's kind of an up-and-coming agent-centric online brokerage. There's a big presence in the Fargo-Moorhead area, Lakes area where we're at, and all across the country. I don't know of anyone who wouldn't recognize the Remax name. Remax is very iconic, started in the 70s. I think Remax really hit their peak probably in the 90s. And of course, companies come and companies go, kind of like we've seen even in retail, JCPenney, Sears, so on and so forth. Like things don't last forever. And, Remax, I think, has been plagued financially and agent count dropping. And now all of a sudden, being taken over by Real. Have you heard much about this, Kayla, or have any thoughts?
I mean, I feel like every realtor on Instagram was posting about it. But, I think that there's a lot to be said about this. I'm not a realtor. I can't speak on behalf of the people at Remax or Real, but what I'm seeing is that there's a startup Real that has shared that they've got all this technology, and they have not been around nearly as long as Remax. Remax has been around since, was it 1973? And so I think there's a lot to be said about, I personally don't think it matters where you work. I mean, to an extent, yes, it does. But when I think about clients that are reaching out to realtors, I don't think they're going to say, you have Remax or Real on your jacket, I'm going to work with you or I'm not. I just think at the end of the day that it's about the people. When you're a realtor, it's about your connections, your communication, your grit, your heart. And I think if you focus on that, whether this is a good move or a scary move, at the end of the day, people work with people. So.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's really interesting, and we know that when we talked about it in the past with technology, with AI, changes are coming, and not every company is equipped, to deal with those changes. A lot of people say, well, a big part of it is because, the Remax agents need Real's technology. When I look at their technology, I question how valuable it truly is, other than being, somewhat of a back office for agents. Granted, I also was at Remax at one point, and their technology was not great. But I think a lot of it's hyped up, kind of like AI is a buzzword for so many people. Most people aren't using it. They don't know how to work with it. I just think it's a sign of the times, and there's going to be more consolidation. It's also very interesting for me to kind of look at the stock and, interesting Real stock, and not that it's worth much in the first place at $2 and change, but really dropped. And then, Remax stock kind of went up, but then kind of has trended down. I don't know. I think the
Mhm.
stocks are garbage. I was at EXP and they were so agent centric, and you can earn company stock, but I don't know. I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to that, but it'll be interesting to watch and see how the industry continues to ebb and flow.
Do you think there will be then no brick and mortar anymore? I mean, since Real is cloud-based, will these Remax offices go away? Like what's your thought on that?
So EXP officially did not pay for any office space outside of what they needed for a state office. I think Real does the same thing. You can have your own office as a team or whatever. And I
Sure.
think they're still running the two companies separately, although they're going to share some resources. I think there's always going to be some sort of brick and mortar out there because there are some individuals that, hey, that's what we want. That's the experience that we want. And if you have a team, you've got to have a place to huddle. I think the big play here for Real is just they want access to the database of Remax and all of the names and the clients and the agents, because where real estate brokerages are really focusing right now is ancillary services and making additional revenue off of that. Things like mortgage, title, home inspection services, home warranties. So they're looking at that and really trying to boost the agent and client count as they roll out more of those ancillary services.
Makes you wonder what's going to happen with Motto Mortgage, because there's a lot of there's like a motto inside of Remax. I don't know if that's everywhere, but yeah, that makes sense. I guess we'll see what happens, but it's another hot topic, and we'll keep everyone up to speed as we learn more too. So
for sure,
like a news anchor. Back to you, Andy.
Back to you. More at 5. Michaela, I think that's a wrap on episode 106, which was proved to be jam-packed and a lot of good info. I'm glad you got away for vacation. I'm glad you're having a great week, and we will chat with you next week.
We'll see you soon. Bye.